What's up, party people, and welcome back to the Beyond Network. Today, oh man, it's going to be a big one. We're going to be doing just the ultimate guide on the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, now that we've finally had the price reveal of the PlayStation 5 at last night's event. And basically we're going to be delving into both and helping you decide which one you should upgrade to, or even if you should upgrade at all, if it's worth putting it off or doing it as soon as the consoles come out. Initially, we're going to be looking at each of the consoles, comparing the two, as well as the more budget versions of them. I guess you have obviously the digital PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S. So I'll be comparing those as well as the standard PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, as well as delving into what kind of gamer you are and how that might affect your purchasing choices. So initially we'll look at both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Specs wise, they're both coming in at $500, which, well, $499, which will equate to $459 in the UK. PlayStation 5 releases November 12th, 2020, and the Xbox Series X 2 days earlier on November 10th. However, November 12th is only for a certain set of countries, and it's November 19th for the rest of the world, including the UK. So, looking at these from a hardware perspective, they are both powerful machines. There is no way to buy a PC, which obviously most people would argue you can upgrade and is superior. At this price point, there is no PC that you can buy that has the same specifications and will match them in terms of 4K gaming or up to 8K resolution. It just is not possible. You're looking at well over $1,000 to get that kind of performance. But obviously with a PC, it's a bit more versatile. You can edit, render. There's a lot of different things you can do with a PC, apart from just it being a games console. So they have an almost identical CPU, which is the brain of the console. The PlayStation 5 has an 8-core, 3.5 GHz AMD Zen 2 processor, and the Xbox Series X also has an 8-core but 3.8 GHz write speed AMD Zen 2 processor. So almost exact in terms of performance there. So when it comes to the graphics processing unit, or the GPU, graphics card, whatever you want to call it, we have 10.3 teraflop AMD RDNA 2 for the PlayStation 5 and a 12 teraflop AMD RDNA 2. So same graphics card, different amount of teraflops. So this is where some people get a little bit confused, because they just say straight up that more teraflops equals more power, equals, a better console. But there's loads of things that go into, that how well the game's optimized, all that sort of thing. There's a lot of things that can affect the performance of a GPU. Also, what is a teraflop? Marketing love to use it, because obviously with Xbox I can say 12 teraflops is the most powerful games console available right now. And in terms of teraflops, that might be true, but what teraflops basically means, it's the amount of floating point calculations that each console can perform. So here we go. 12 teraflops means that the Xbox Series X is capable of performing 12 trillion floating point calculations each second. Okay. The Xbox One X only has 4 teraflops, so it can perform 4 trillion floating point calculations each second, and it means that the PS5 can successfully complete 10 trillion floating point calculations each second. Obviously, to most people, that's not going to mean anything. It's just another part of the GPU. So don't be, taken on side when they're like, it's got more teraflops, it's more this, because a lot goes into how good a game looks and the graphics of a game than just teraflops. All right, but in that sense, the Xbox Series X does have a slight advantage, because it's 12 teraflops to 10.3. When in terms of RAM, which is your random access memory, both of them have 16 gig GDDR6 RAM, which is the standard for a lot of gaming PCs these days. Some bump it up to 32 if they've really got a powerhouse. Storage, both of these, I believe, are custom, so they're custom made for the consoles. Again, you cannot find one of these SSDs inside a PC, just is not possible. You'll have to get a standard SSD. So for the PlayStation 5, you have an 825 gig custom SSD, and the Xbox Series X has a 1TB custom NVMe SSD. NVMe are the really, really tiny cards that you get, and they're lightning fast. So both of these are going to have really, really fast SSDs, as opposed to HDDs or hard disk drives that you had on the current generation, soon to be the last generation. So the difference is SSDs are solid state drives. They're much faster at reading and writing data. So in terms of transferring data between consoles or loading games, that's the main thing that these consoles are going to do. Don't expect a huge jump in graphical quality between the current generation and next gen, because that probably isn't going to be there for a good few years. Okay, what these consoles are designed to do is have more on screen, more particles on screen, more effects, that sort of thing, as well as having just larger worlds that load instantly, effectively. That's the point of an SSD, is that almost non-existent loading screens, you know, when you're transitioning between areas and different things like that, or, you know, no loading screens whatsoever. Either they're negligible or not there at all. That's the point of an SSD. So looking at these, obviously one has a terabyte, one has 825 gig. At the end of the day, if we're having this console for what could be another 7 years, like this last console generation, we're pretty much all going to be buying another external hard drive. However, you will probably want to get an external SSD instead, just so you don't slow down how quickly your games run. Resolution, they've both been rated that they can go up to 8K. I believe the claim is it can go up to 8K native resolution, rather than the letterbox or pixel shift that the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro do to trick your eyes into seeing a 4K image. Both I know can do 4K native resolution, but I believe it's up to 8K, but it's going to be a while till we have an 8K game, and most people don't even have 8K TVs, because a lot of people were only just embracing 4K TVs at this point. So it's going to be a while till that's even used, and frame rates up to 120 frames per second, which is pretty good. A lot of computer monitors can go above that, 144 Hz, 240, and I believe 360 Hz are soon coming out. A new range from, I think it's Nvidia, obviously. And both of them, the normal ones have an optical disc drive for 4K Blu-rays, essentially. So you can watch your films on there if you've got a 4K TV, as well as play your games. So now that we've got through all of the specifications, which one is going to be best for you? Because both of these are very, very similar. So when we look at it in terms of game releases, that is probably how you should look at most of these, to be fair. Which one has the games that you want to play? Some of the key exclusives for the PlayStation 5 are obviously Spider-Man Miles Morales, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, Forbidden West, and Gran Turismo 7, just to name a few. For Xbox Series X, we have Halo Infinite, Senua's Saga, which is Hellblade 2, Forza Motorsport 8, and State of Decay 3. Obviously, those are quite different games. That's because these days Sony tends to go for your big single-player story experiences, and Xbox is creating more of an ecosystem with Gamepass, the amount of games, being able to play anywhere. That's their kind of ethos going forward. So when we're looking at this, the initial thing you need to look at is what games you want to play. That should be what you're picking in terms of, you know, money-wise. When we look at the specs, though, that's where, you know, you need to think to yourself, do I have the relevant equipment to get the most out of these consoles? Because a lot of people, monitor-wise, still working on 1080p, maybe 1440p. If you're a PC gamer, you're more than likely going to have a 1440p, which is essentially 2K. By the way, guys, it's half of 4K, essentially, is a 1440p monitor when I refer to that. Or some people might have a 4K monitor or 4K TVs. If you don't have a 4K TV, in terms of one of these consoles, you probably won't get the most out of it when you're playing a game. Obviously, you'll see the graphic fidelity. The game will look better. It'll run faster. But you won't have that resolution of 4K. You'll still be limited to 1080p, which essentially would still be similar to playing on your current console. Obviously, if you have a base Xbox One or base PS4 that you've had for the last 7 years, you might see quite a jump. But if you're currently working with an Xbox One X or maybe an Xbox One S, the difference will probably be negligible at best. The thing is, if you want the best experience, you probably are, you know, best moving to a 4K display of some sort, because that is where these consoles are going. That's the whole point, is 4K resolution and up to 8K resolution. That's where they're moving forward, to give you that depth, that graphical fidelity. That's the whole point of these consoles, to move it forward. So if you don't have a 4K TV, it might not be entirely worth it for you, especially because backwards compatibility wise, all PS4 games including those optimized for PS4 Pro with the enhancements. Almost all, at least. I believe the top 100 are confirmed, will be playable on PlayStation 5, and all Xbox One games, some Xbox 360 and some original Xbox games will be available on the Xbox Series X. The thing is with this, most of these games you can just play right now. In terms of actual launch games, there aren't any huge ones confirmed for either console. So you are potentially going to be playing last gen games that are enhanced or run faster in some way, either graphical fidelity or they run faster due to the SSD, instead of an actual, next gen looking game at launch with one of these consoles. Because, Halo Infinite was being pushed back to 2021, and Spider-Man Miles Morales doesn't launch till holiday 2020. So we're assuming December, so about a month after it releases, because they haven't amended the release date or given us something specific. So we're still assuming with the PS5 you've got about a month until, that game is coming out. With some of these though, you have current gen games like Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and for example, let's say Cyberpunk 2077. Both of those are releasing October-November time, and both of them have said you'll be able to get an upgrade for free to your next gen console of choice. But are those upgrades, some of them are going to be available at launch, so you will be able to play those games. They'll look a lot better, they'll run faster, you're going to be loving life at your 4K resolution at launch. Some of the games, it's going to take a bit of time for that new version to come out, so you'll effectively be playing the same version, just backwards compatible on your new console. So you need to weigh up if that's worth it for you when you drop in £500, maybe more, on one of these consoles. So now that we've covered the initial two, have a quick look at the more budget editions of these consoles. So you have the Xbox Series S, going to be priced at $299. It has 4 teraflops, can do 4 trillion floating point calculations per second, and it has a 1.55 gigahertz custom RDNA 2 graphics card. It has an 8-core 3.6 gigahertz custom Zen 2 CPU and 10 gig of GDDR6 RAM. Resolution wise, its target is 1440p, and it can do 4K upscaled, similar to the Xbox One X, which is their current powerful console. Frame rate, it says 60 FPS guaranteed, up to 120 FPS, so you're saying it can get up there in terms of the other consoles, and it has ray tracing like the other consoles do as well. Storage is only a 512 gig SSD, so it's a guarantee you'll be buying an external SSD for that. Again, no optical drive on that one, it is digital, so that's obviously why it comes in cheaper, but it's also because digital games are more expensive, so in the long run you need to weigh up, but if you're going to be buying an external hard drive anyway for your more powerful console, I would say possibly stick to the more powerful one if you want that 4K experience, and it's 60% smaller than the Xbox Series X is what they've told us. So the PS5 digital edition comes in at $399. The thing is with this one, it's really a bit of an unfair comparison, because the Xbox Series X is designed to be budget. It can only go up to 1440p, which by the way, most TVs don't support that. So you won't be able to buy just a 1440p TV, you'll need a 1440p or 2K monitor, because there's no 2K video content really out there. It's 1080p or 4K at the moment, So 4K upscale will probably be best for you if you have a 4K TV. Yeah, so in terms of this comparison, it is unfair on Xbox, unfortunately, because the PS5 digital edition has the exact same specifications as the normal PlayStation 5. It just doesn't have an optical disc drive. That's it. And it comes in at obviously $399 or $359 if you're working in pounds. Still has the 10.28 teraflops on the custom RDNA 2 GPU. Still has 8-core 3.5 GHz custom Zen 2 processor and 16 gig of GDDR6 RAM. So in terms of performance, again, it's looking at 4K up to 8K, up to 120 frames per second with its 825 gig SSD. So it destroys the Xbox Series S to a degree. It really does in terms of performance. So in terms of the budget ones, obviously there's $100 between them, but you are getting a hell of a lot in terms of performance between those two consoles. The Xbox Series S, however, you will be having Gamepass on there, more than likely included, and there is a pay monthly option that they have introduced for those who want to get either the Series S or the Series X to make it, a bit easier for people to pay off who can't just drop £300 or £500 on a console at the drop of a hat, you know? But there is quite a difference. It's basically the full-powered PS5 or the full-powered PS5 without a disc drive, or the Xbox Series X, you know, the big boy, the powerhouse, or the Xbox Series S. What also came out recently is the Xbox Series S. It won't play the enhanced versions of Xbox One games like the Xbox One X does, up to 4K, you know, higher performance. It'll play the Xbox One S versions, which suggests, because the Xbox One X also has 4 teraflops, if you have a normal Xbox and you can only afford to go up to the Xbox Series S, the Xbox One X might actually be a decent option for you, because it is more powerful. It'll go up to this 4K upscaled resolution, and for, I believe, the first year anyway, for both Sony and Xbox, all of those big releases will also be releasing on current gen. So although they might be exclusive, they're still going to be on your Xbox One and your PlayStation 4. So when it comes to this, your Xbox One X, although it won't be able to hit the higher frame rates, you will be getting similar graphical performance in terms of the resolution. So if you are going from a base Xbox, it might be worth just going for the Xbox One X for the time being. Potentially, it would be worth definitely looking at a comparison between those ones. But obviously for this, we are just sticking to these 4 main next-gen consoles. For this, we also need to look at what type of gamer you are. So for PlayStation 5, well, Sony in general, the past couple of years, they focused on big single-player story-driven games that are lauded for awards and the impact that they have on gaming in general. Things such as Sony's Spider-Man, The Last of Us Part 2, Days Gone, God of War, all these really big games that have won so many awards and are loved by so many. They're the exclusives that Sony tends to move towards, whereas Xbox is about an ecosystem that you can play anywhere now on your mobile phone with xCloud, Gamepass Ultimate that covers PC as well, which I have been using, as you know, my PC can take it, and having parties come across PC, your phone, through the Xbox app. That's what they're moving towards. Obviously, they have Halo, which is going to be a big single-player game, but they have the multiplayer element as well. So if you're someone who is mainly a social gamer and mainly plays Xbox or PlayStation just to be online with friends, doesn't really matter too much which one you go for, because the big games are still going to be on each console. If all of your friends are moving towards one, obviously that's going to push you towards that next gen. However, for the moment, you might not even need to upgrade, because those games, see, I have a lot of friends that will just play Call of Duty and FIFA. They'll be the 2 games that they play every year without fail, and they pretty much play nothing else. Loads of big games can come out, they can win awards, just goes by them. They play COD, they play FIFA because they're in it for the social aspect, which is totally fine. It's all good to be a gamer like that. You're in it for the social side, quick blast of multiplayer, pro clubs, or you like Ultimate Team, something like that. You're into those games. You get them each year. Even though FIFA, to me, bit of a cash grab. It's very similar every single year. You know, both of those games are going to be releasing on the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, or they're going to be playable at least. FIFA 21 is confirmed to just be on the current consoles. You'll be able to play it on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, but there's no upscale as yet. It's just going to be available backwards compatible. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, however, will have a newer version that performs better, higher resolution, higher frame rate, that sort of thing. That will be available, I'm pretty sure, fairly soon after the game launches. I believe it will be ready when the consoles launch. So for things like that, if you're only playing 2 games a year, and those games are going to be releasing on, at least for the next year, on your current gen, it might not be worth it for a gamer like you to upgrade right now, unless obviously all of your friends are, or they're swapping platform and you still want to be able to play with them. We also need to look at if you're a single player gamer, if you're a bit of both. Me, I like to play online with friends, but I also love my single player experiences. I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima this year. That's been fantastic. Again, another big single player title from Sony. And I love the Spider-Man game from 2018, and I look forward to playing Miles Morales. In terms of that, if I see the boys are online, but there's a single player game that I really want to play, I know I can play with the boys whenever. But if I really want to play this game and finish it, I don't want to neglect it. I don't want it to just gather dust and just be a waste of money that I just never touch. I'm going to, in the nicest way possible, ignore the boys, because party chat, as fun as it is, it's going to distract me from the game. It's going to take away from those big story moments. Because just imagine you're playing through something like The Last of Us 2 or God of War, and you just got your mates in the background. It does detract from kind of, the cinematic feel or the emotional side of things, the effects that it's supposed to have on you while you're playing through them. See, I can easily do that, but I have some friends that maybe want to play these single player games. But if the boys are online, they can't resist that. So they're not necessarily going to be able to play that single player game. So you need to think about what kind of gamer you are, where your friends are, and which one you want to go for in that sense. If you're happy to play both, and you want those big single player stories, and you're interested in the exclusives from Sony, looks like it might be a PlayStation 5 for you. If you just want to play socially with your friends, you're probably going to go with what your friends are getting, or not even, upgrading at all, because some games are going to have cross-generational cross-play, and I believe Call of Duty is one of those. So if you've got a normal Xbox One, you can still play with your friends on Xbox Series X. It's going to be the same servers. All right. Obviously, FIFA and some of the big EA games don't have cross-play as yet. Somehow, in this day and age, I don't know how. Probably because EA servers are notoriously bad. But Apex Legends in, the autumn is going to have crossplay added across all the way into Switch as well, I believe. So you need to look at, obviously, what games are coming out. Are you interested in those exclusives? Do you have the gear to successfully play in 4K if that's what you want to do? If you don't want to play in 4K, probably doesn't matter too much to you. You could probably stay on your own console, to be fair. And you need to look at, socially, what kind of gamer are you? So you need to look at the games. Do you have the equipment to run a 4K experience if that's what you want? And what kind of gamer are you? Do you just want to play with your friends, or do you want to do a bit of both? Or are you just story-driven? If you're just story-driven, PlayStation 5 has the big ones right now. That's what Sony moves towards. We also need to look at the games available at launch. They're okay. They're decent. With Xbox Series X, you're going to have Gamepass. And if you don't already have Gamepass, which I believe probably the vast majority of Xbox users do, because Gamepass Ultimate includes Xbox Live Gold, then it's likely that you already have this platform and all these games available to you. So it's such an abundance of games, you'll probably never get through them all. There's first-party titles from Xbox, almost every single first-party title. By first-party, I mean made by Xbox or Xbox Studios or Xbox-owned studios. Most of those are coming day one to Game Pass, which is huge, because if you can't afford to just drop 50, well, possibly up to £70 or $70 for this new generation of games every single time a new game comes out, Game Pass is much more cost effective for you, because you're getting a new game day one within the cost of your subscription. It works. A lot of games there. Until last night, Sony did not have anything like that. You get PlayStation Now, but that was more for streaming typically older games. There wasn't just a library you could just dip in and out of, apart from games that you purchased or PlayStation Plus exclusive games that were, coming out to you for free each month. Last night, however, the announcement, they gave us the PlayStation Plus collection, which will be available to all users at launch of the PlayStation 5. What this is a collection of some of the biggest games of this current console generation, PlayStation 4, available to everyone. So if you're making the jump from Xbox to PlayStation 4 and you haven't had the chance to play those big story-driven games, you've missed out on them, now's your chance, and you're going to have plenty of time before another big exclusive for Sony comes out. Some of these games included Batman Arkham Knight, God of War, Final Fantasy was in there. I'm not sure if the first Spider-Man was in there, actually, which did surprise me, considering the deal that Sony and Insomniac have. But I believe altogether I counted around 17 to 20 games that were available within that PlayStation Plus collection. Resident Evil 7 was another one. So all of these primary Sony titles that have such big, wonderful, great games, although it's not as much in terms of quantity as what Game Pass has to offer, the quality of the games are huge. All of them are pretty big, story-driven games. Fallout 4 was another one. There's so many games in there that you can sink just a ton of hours into. They're either open world or big story-driven games that will take you 20 to 30 hours, probably on a minimum for some of those games. So you're looking at just a lot of hours playtime. And if you've never played those games before, it's the best time ever to get into them. So now that we've covered that, I'm hoping you have a bit more of a better understanding of which one you want to go for. I am going to be doing another guide on what you might need tech-wise when it comes to TVs, monitors, that sort of thing. But the bottom line for this is vote with your wallet when it comes to this. I think the most cost-effective for most people, if you are desperate to move over to next gen and say you want that 4K experience, or you want, if you've got just a normal HD TV or 1440p monitor and you still want to see that kind of higher resolution, that graphic fidelity, the best choice for you, especially if you buy your games digitally, that's another big thing you need to look at, where you buy your games from. The PS5 digital edition at $399 or $359 in pounds is around $100 cheaper than the more powerful counterpart. However, with the digital edition of the PS5, you're getting almost the exact same specifications as the Xbox Series X and the PS5, but for much cheaper. And if you're mainly buying your games digitally anyway, and you're going to be buying an SSD for the other one anyway, this makes sense. It makes sense. Rather than going for an Xbox Series S, which you're just not going to get that performance out of, the same as the digital edition of the PlayStation 5, it makes sense to spend that little bit extra and have the top of the line console that trounces the Xbox Series S and is almost on par, pretty much on par with the Xbox Series X for a cheaper price. Because, I mean, why would I get an Xbox Series X if I'm buying digitally, for example? Why would I get an Xbox Series X when I could get the PS5 digital edition, which has almost the exact same specifications, just doesn't have a disk drive, for $100 cheaper? I'm going with the PlayStation every time. It's just more cost effective. It makes sense, you know? I don't have Gamepass, but I've got all these other games that I can play. Like, I'm not a fanboy either way. I have both consoles. I also have a gaming PC. I just love gaming in general. I'm not trying to force you one way or the other. I'm just thinking of telling you ways that you can evaluate yourself and which one that you should go for, okay? With this, I think that the smart one, what I'm saying is the smart one, if you're voting with your wallet, you want to save a bit of money, but also have that 4K experience, it's the PS5 digital edition. For me, in my opinion, that makes sense. Yeah, you might be paying a bit of a higher cost when it comes to just paying digitally, but that's where websites like CD keys and things like that come in. So in the long run, you might be paying a little bit more, but if you're one of those people that only plays the big, you know, landmark releases like the Call of Duties or the FIFAs, that's two, maybe 3 games a year for 7 years, like, and you got it £100 cheaper, still got the same specs, you know. To me, probably the PS5 digital edition, if you want a budget 4K gaming experience up to 8K, 120 frames per second, that seems like the smart buy for me. That's if you're not planning on trading in your games. If you still get a lot of games on disc, hey, go for the full version of the PS5 or the Xbox Series X. You know, there isn't, at the end of the day, there is not a huge difference between these consoles. What matters is what games you're into, where your friends are, or where your friends could be if they're going to swap over with you, you know, and if you have the tech and the gear in order to let you get the full experience out of these consoles. Because some people won't at the end of the day, and they probably just shouldn't upgrade right now. If you plan on getting a 4K TV, you can get a lot of them fairly budget now that will give you that resolution. They might not have the best blacks or contrast, you know, but they give you that resolution. And if that's all you're caring about, you can get some decent budget options. And I'll go into that into another video, because right now we're already super long when it comes to this one, just on the consoles. For me, I might end up getting both. I'm probably looking towards the PlayStation 5 just because I still want to play with friends, and if they swap over, that will be ideal. But those single player story driven games, for me, I love them. I've got time to put into them, you know, after work and when I'm streaming, you know, that'll be in the description, you know, give me a follow on there. And that's probably the one I'm going to go for, mainly because of the exclusives. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. At the end of the day, look at the prices, look at the games, if you're interested in them, where your friends are, and what type of gamer you are, whether it's socially, single player, or a bit of both. Once you've got those 4 or 5 things down, should be an easy choice for you. At the end of the day, they're very, very similar, almost exactly the same. Digital on the Series S, a little bit different, but that's what I'm saying, you know, that's what I'm saying. I hope this helped. Obviously, we went into a bit of a longer video, but, you know, you got to explain these things. You have to explain these things so people are informed about which console to go for. So I hope this helped. And for more news, previews, reviews, you know, things like this where we go beyond the hardware, keep it locked on the Beyond Network, and check me out on Twitch for your live gaming or YouTube needs. I'll see you all next time.